distant northern skies. At that point, I realized I don't know where it comes from, but I know it's okay. If this is all an illusion, then I'm willing to play.
You are listening to Karen Holton's Quantum Health Transformation Podcast. Karen earned a bachelor degree with distinction in social work from the University of Victoria, as well as a diploma in women's studies from North Island College. In addition, she has 48 plus years personal cannabis research and has been federally licensed for medical cannabis therapy since 2007. Karen has worked for the North Island Compassion Club, AIDS Vancouver Island, and not to mention a private practice which has received physician referrals. She is also the founder of Vancouver Island Alternative Lifestyle Services, founded in 2007. Now, Vials was originally developed to support people of alternative lifestyles, but more recently has come to assist individuals and groups with quantum health transformation, which is a program Karen has developed to help individuals to heal, evolve, and thrive. Karen's education and practice qualify her as an addiction therapist, counselor, and lifestyle coach. No referral necessary. You can find more information about the quantum health transformation and other items of interest at KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com or via Facebook at facebook.com/quantumhealthtransformation. And now, here's the podcast.
Today I'd like to talk a little bit about marijuana versus cannabis. What is the difference? What is it being used for? Why is there so much controversial information out there about it? Well, I'm going to tell you what I know, and I actually do know quite a bit about it because I was a medical cannabis social worker on Vancouver Island for about 2 years, but I've actually had experience going back much further than that. I worked at AIDS Vancouver Island in Victoria, and when I went to university, I specialized in substance use and addictions and family counseling. Later, I worked at AIDS Vancouver Island, or AVI for short, in Victoria, and I was assisting all kinds of people, not just cannabis users, but certainly intravenous substance users, and the whole gambit of options there. Then I also, later when I was in the Comox Valley, worked for the North Island Compassion Society. When I worked there, I not only did a lot of research, but I also did everything from dispensing to testing cannabis. At that time, there was a few places we could send cannabis for testing, but actually this particular compassion club had a very low budget and was very small scale, and so we used old-fashioned methods to test the cannabis to see if it was healthy and to see if there was problems with it. And then I also did a fair amount of testing, and I put together actually a manual for North Island Compassion Club, and the manual had the strains that we had available to us, what the effect was like, what the onset was like, any side effects. And so somebody who has a very sensitive system had to do the testing, and that was me at the time. And I was able to put together a very good comprehensive manual. I also have worked with Ted Smith out of Victoria, the Cannabis Buyers Association, and the VIX Victoria Compassion Society as well. So, I do have a fair amount of experience in more ways than one. So I want to tell you a little bit about the controversy here. Actually, I picked up a brochure that was pretty scary that is produced by the RCMP that makes cannabis sound like it's a really, really dangerous drug. But it's interesting, they're not referring to cannabis. So here, let's get into what's the difference between marijuana and cannabis. Okay, cannabis is a God-made medicine. It's been used globally for thousands and thousands of years. It's so effective and has so many uses in health that it was regularly prescribed, taken, and valued up until the early 1900s, at least in Canada. It's interesting to see that it was only with the emergence of big pharma and other industries that wanted to grow, and they didn't want any competition. So let's go over to the marijuana. There I was talking about cannabis. Now, marijuana is a construct. Marijuana doesn't exist. Marijuana is a man-made construct. So the first thing they did was they invented a name, marijuana. It's a combination between Mary and Juan. And it was actually meant to be a bit of a racist slur and a way of putting down this type of medicine. Now, it went to the government, to be made illegal, but nobody knew what marijuana was. All they knew is that they were being lobbied to shut down this dangerous drug called marijuana. Now, if they had known that it was actually cannabis, and if they'd used the word cannabis, it never would have been shut down because it helped so many people with their health and was so well tolerated and well established into medical practices. So the first thing is they made a construct. Then they used racist and fictitious information to form a very heavy bias against cannabis, but they're not calling it that. They're calling it marijuana, to make people afraid of it and to make politicians pass laws against it. And again, go over to the non-construct, which is actually just the God-made healing medicine. And it has so many applications, the plant itself. It can produce fuel, it can produce edible oils, it can produce proteins and food for cattle and food for humans. It can produce textiles. It can produce everything we need, and so cheap and so healthy and so recyclable and so biodegradable. See where I'm going with this? And so what happened is they decided to shut it all down. And, the politicians, they get together and let's face it, who pays for them to run as candidates and to be in office? Big business. So big business wanted cannabis shut down. So they brought out these laws talking about how dangerous marijuana was, and they built a construct, a fantasy, and they wrapped that around cannabis and passed it off as something dangerous, something illegal. And there are people, probably thousands of people, in jail in North America simply for using this wonderful plant that we used to be able to go into a compounding pharmacist and just buy. We didn't even need a prescription for it because there was no threat attached to this type of medicine. So now you can see that there is a huge, huge difference. And there's lots of reasons. Do your research. You'll see so many reasons why they wanted to shut cannabis down. And what's really interesting is in Canada, for a long time, since 2001, you could actually get a legal license to grow, to use cannabis. But they used to call it marijuana. And then they shut down that program. And the Supreme Court of Canada told the Canadian government, no, you can't do that. This is medicine. It's being prescribed by doctors. And you can't shut people down. You need to get your shit together on a government level and come up with a better system where patients can use this as medicine. So now the government has come out with a new program. Well, it's been around for a few years now, but it's called It's called ACMPR, and it stands for Access to Cannabis for Medical Purposes Regulation. And you need a doctor or any doctor, and I believe it was in the beginning, I don't know if it still is, I'll have to look this up, but it used to be that any nurse practitioner or any doctor can prescribe cannabis to a patient. And that's happening all over BC. It has been for years. So in Alberta, especially central Alberta, it's still being stigmatized as this dangerous drug. The doctors don't want anything to do with it. The doctors, I've been to see two general practitioners who've both told me that it is illegal for them to prescribe it. And such bullshit. So somebody is feeding them a whole lot of poppycock, and they don't know. And so they're doing the best they can with what they have. And the same thing with the RCMP. You know, my first reaction was, wow, if they're lying to this degree to me, what else are they lying about? And then I realized, no, they're not actually lying. This is the information they've been given. It's wrong, it's outdated, but it doesn't, it doesn't make it right. And so I guess one of my jobs is going to have to go to visit the local constabulary and have a little chat with them. Which I hope goes well. So getting back to cannabis, which is the medicine, not marijuana the construct. If you want to know how it works, people think, oh, you just get high and you relax and then you don't care about anything. But that's not true at all. Medical cannabis is taken from healthy, chemical-free plants, and it supplies hundreds of medicinal components. They're meant to work together, forming a cascade healing effect. And that is why I don't recommend that people use derivatives too much. If it's the whole plant that's been cooked and extracted into oil or extracted into alcohol, that I think is probably still pretty safe medicine. When you get into some of these derivatives like shatter and stuff like that, what's happening is you're taking components from the THC and you're isolating them from the rest of the plant. And so this is meant to be used as a whole plant, whether it's smoked, vaporized, or extracted into alcohol, and that's how candies are made, and it can be extracted, like gummy bears, it can be extracted into coconut oil, which is what I usually do, and you still have all the whole plants. You've got ground up stems, and you've got leaves, and you've got buds, and you've got everything in there. Now, there's been very little research done in North America, but in Israel and other places in the world, there's been lots of research. So you can really find out the truth about this powerful medicine if you want to. And of course, you may not want to, which is okay too. So it also has THC, which is actually delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol. It includes terpenoids and flavonoids and other nitrous compounds that are more common plant molecules. And these work together to stimulate your own immune system via your endocannabinoid system. And so they just discovered the endocannabinoid system maybe about 10 years ago. And for some reason, the way we live is shutting down our ability to produce our own stimulants for the receptor sites, which is our own body actually produces CBDs. And we're all born with CBD receptor sites. So far, they've discovered two different kinds, CB1s and CB2s. So we're born with them. And so we're supposed to be producing our own cannabis-like substances, but for some reason we're not. And so cannabis is the plant exact copy of what we need. So when we get it into our bodies, whether we eat it or whether we're vaporizing, what it does is it goes and rests on every receptor site in the body, and we have millions. They're on every nerve. Every nerve has a receptor site for it. And it fills a little spot that's waiting for it, like a key that goes into a little lock. And as soon as that happens, the cannabis doesn't actually do anything except stimulate those receptor sites. Now, once that happens, the body gets all excited because it now knows how to communicate with it. So now your healing centers are now communicating with all the parts of your body, and the body starts to go to healing. It also causes a type 2 cell death or a self-destruct sequence to go off within the body's own immune system, which kills cancer. And I myself was tested for some symptoms. The doctor told me I had cancer. She wanted me to go in for surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation. She was all in a flap, wanted me to get into the wait list right away. I said okay to the surgeon. I had 3 months, and I used the Rick Simpson oil, which is commonly called Phoenix Tears, and within 3 months, I did some other things too. I really paid attention to my lifestyle. I have to say, that is key to everything. If you want to get better and you're not paying attention to your lifestyle, all the cannabis in the world will will probably help, but certainly I can't see it curing you. Generally, it's not. If it was that much of a miracle drug, people would be using it and not be sick anymore. But people don't know how to use it. And because it's been pushed as a recreational substance under the name of marijuana, people don't know how to use it properly. So anyway, that's what I wanted to say about how it works. And I can give you a lot more information, but this is just a brief overview. So people who consider medical cannabis, generally they have some serious health issues and they have tried going to the doctor, they've tried taking the pills, they've tried a lot of the testing for different kinds of illnesses is horrible. It's basically torture, and they've done all of that, and they've been good citizens, and they've done everything they can, and they're still suffering and or they're still dying. Then they want to try cannabis, of course. Some people want to use it because they've explored their options, and the most holistic option they can find, again, is cannabis. Some people want to use it. They're already using it for their health, and they're tired of having to go out and find some drug pusher on the street and buy what's called street weed, because let's face it, people are dying like crazy from the contaminants like fentanyl and other contaminants. You don't know what they're grown with. You don't know how they're grown. You don't know anything about it. And people are that way. They're dying from cannabis. Well, it's actually not medical. It's not medical grade. And so they want to avoid that. So then they go to the doctors and they get their form filled out and they register with Health Canada. And now they get to have nice, clean medicine from a dispensary or from a designated grower. Or if they're good at growing things, they might want to grow their own. That is totally doable. So another reason is some people just don't want to deal with the criminal elements. Apparently, there's a lot of cannabis being grown and dispensed, well, not dispensed, but sold, through criminal agencies. And some people just don't want anything to do with that. I know I sure don't. And the fifth reason why people would use cannabis is because they're already using it and it's super improved their life. And it doesn't make your problems go away. You still got to do everything you need to do to be responsible, to be a responsible citizen, to take good care of your health. But it definitely is the best medicine I've ever tried. I'm not trying to talk you into it. If you don't need it, don't use it. Just, if you don't need it, don't use it. The other thing I want to say is people think of marijuana as smoking, and everybody knows smoking isn't good for you. But did you know that actually when you're using it medically, you actually ingest it? So there are, as I mentioned, extractions into glycerin, alcohol, or any edible oil. And when you do it that way, what you do is you're having little doses throughout the day. And the first, week, you're pretty sleepy. But after that, you adjust to it. You build tolerance. You don't notice the side effects anymore. But just because you don't notice the side effects doesn't mean it stopped working. It still works just as good. And unlike pharmaceuticals, cannabis tolerance does not diminish the anti-inflammatory or other potent healing properties of this medicine. So I thought you'd want to know about that. I have a bit to say about cannabis and holistic healing. In spite of all the good evidence about medical cannabis, fear-based thinking remains a part of our cultural consciousness. So the propaganda has spread that cannabis is somehow dangerous, and they do that by calling it marijuana, which is part of the construct. It's not actually the God-given medicine. So think about this. 250,000 people have died in alcohol-related accidents in the past 10 years. Now, I'm not sure if this is a Canadian or American statistic, but certainly North America. 0 have died from cannabis, especially medical cannabis. Now, people have died from fentanyl that's in cannabis and other horrible things, or from mixing it with cocaine or God knows what, or getting drunk and driving, of course. But from cannabis itself, especially in the health-related medical context, 0 have died from cannabis ever. Think about that. How many people have died from pharmaceuticals? Thousands, hundreds of thousands, botched surgeries, hundreds of thousands. 0 have died from cannabis use. Medical cannabis as I mentioned, a little direct on the body. It switches on our own immune system, which heals the body via our endocannabinoid system. And for most people, cannabis provides a calming effect. It's certainly anti-inflammatory, and we know now that inflammation is a big part of why people are sick. And it also creates an internal environment that is very conducive to healing. Interestingly, the Bible in two places, one at Ezekiel 47:12 says, "Their fruit will serve for food and their leaves for healing." And in Revelation 22:2 it says, "The leaves were used for medicine to heal the nations." This is a God-given medicine that helps people to heal. I'm not saying the Bible supports cannabis, although there are certainly some people who believe it does. But my point I'm trying to make here is that turning to the leaves of the trees, the leaves of the plants, natural, what we call nutraceuticals or phytonutrients or okay, I've lost the word. Anyway, but the point is that plant-based medicines are part of energy healing, which is really becoming popular today and has no side effects. So there is one other thing I wanted to say, and that's about feelings and sensations. People who are first-time users will definitely notice some effect. And I call these feelings and sensations. Now, there's the odd person who has a bad experience with cannabis, but generally it's been laced with something. It's not medical cannabis, or they've been given way, way too much, which in edible form is possible. But generally, just going to sleep or having a little something to eat or reassurance from a friend is more than enough. So most patients find the holistic medicine to be very soothing. Health Canada recognizes that cannabis is a legitimate medicine. The Canadian government recognizes it as a legitimate medicine when it's cannabis, called cannabis. It has been authorizing individuals for MCT, which is medical cannabis therapy, since 2001. Remember that alcohol is the most abused drug in Canada, killing 2,000 people every year. No one has died from medical cannabis therapy, ever. Medical cannabis has little direct effect on the body, but it switches on our own immune system, which heals our body via the endocannabinoid system. So cannabis provides a calming effect, anti-inflammatory properties, and creates that internal environment that is very conducive to healing. I will be making more podcasts about this down the road, but for now, I just wanted to clear that up. And if you have any questions, please email me. I'd be happy to do that. I'm going to be making some videos shortly for YouTube. But in the meantime, what's really important here is that you stay well. Stay well. And be careful, because, not everything the authorities tell us is true. It's not that they're lying, it's that they don't have the information. The RCMP only knows what comes down to their drug squad, and they produce brochures thinking they're helping people. The doctors have been told, you're not allowed to prescribe cannabis in Alberta. That's poppycock. But that's what they've been told. Some people have been told it's a dangerous drug. Some people have been told all kinds of things, but those people, they don't know. But guess what? There's a documentary out now. I really recommend everybody watch it. It's about a 6-part series, very in-depth. All the research that's been done in Israel and patients that have actually, never ever been exposed to cannabis, that have cancer and other diseases, and they're considering using it, what that process is like. It's called The Sacred Plant, and it's on YouTube. I highly recommend it. Don't worry if they want you to give them your email in order to get the link to get in to watch the shows. I did, and I haven't had any problem from them. They send me emails, but the stuff they send me is really, really good information and links to other really good research. So I just want you to know about that. And if anybody wants help with their ACMPR application or has any questions or anything like that, please do feel free to give me a call, because one of my many hats is being a medical cannabis social worker. And I'd love to help you out with that. And again, I just want to say, if you don't need it, don't use it. That's simple. Okay, everybody, take care. Love you. Bye-bye.
Surrendering to endlessness puts all my inner strife to rest. For time gives birth to hurriedness. It all makes sense, well, more or less. And the sages put me to their test. With heart and soul, I do my best to find the answers to my quest. I wonder and I